by stirring them, it's going to give a rich kind of creamy style to the wine without adding oak to it. So it's possibly using lees as opposed to using oak as well, which is something that we'll find out in a little bit. So let's try this one real quick. So what do you taste it? So one other thing too, and sorry I didn't point this out. Traditionally, in wine, there's always going to be acid, right? So if you think about it, we have, if you're a really good bartender, you typically are going to have acid and sugar, and they should actually balance. So if you have something that has way too much acid, and so if you ever had like a margarita where they didn't end up adding simple syrup to it, I mean, they're terrible. But at the same point, it's like a sour beer. They're completely out of whack. If you have an IPA, they're really out of whack. Some people like it, but it's really not formulated properly. So, on certain wines, that's kind of where we're heading with this one as well. So actually, let's taste this real quick. So what do you get from it? But is it buttery or is it nutty? Is there also kind of like a cheese rind, almost like a saltiness that you get from? So here's the thing. That's why sometimes it's fun just to throw out some terms and maybe it starts making sense, right? Now, actually, where I was going with that acidic thing as well. If you think about it, there's really going to be 4 different types of acid. So you have lemon, you have lime, you have grapefruit, and you have somewhere in the orange, tangerine, clementine family. And each one of us has our own indicators of what order we like to have those in. So for me personally, I like orange, I like lime, I like lemon, and grapefruit's my least favorite fruit. But when you're also talking about those citrus components, like when you taste this wine, to me it has a little bit of that kind of cheese, kind of nuttiness. There is a little bit of a sour component to it. So as opposed to it being maybe the fleshy part of the citrus, it might even be like if you ever try to open an orange and you couldn't get it open, you fight with your teeth and you get a touch of that bitterness to it as well. So the bitterness is actually in the rind. And so to me, there's a little bit of that. So it's almost like a lime rind where, so is it palate cleansing though? Does it kind of clean? Does it feel like it cleaned anything that you had in your mouth out? All right, so we'll set that one off to the side. So now wine number 3. We said this is New World. So if it is New World, we talked about how we can smell the buttered popcorn, we can smell the apples. So as far as apples are concerned, is this Granny Smith apples? Is this Golden Delicious apples? Is this Macintosh? Honeycrisp. Who doesn't love Honeycrisp? Those are the best apples in the world. So here's the thing: is sometimes when you're smelling things too, it becomes more pleasing to you because I love popcorn, so going to movies. Honeycrisp apples because those are my favorite apples. It has a little bit of that kind of cantaloupe smell to it. So for me personally, before I even taste this wine, I've already told myself in my mind, oh, I'm going to like this because it has all those adjectives of things that I already like. So let's try it. So what's the weight on that wine? It's a little bit heavier. It's a little bit fuller. Do you taste a little bit of vanilla in that as well? Oh, it's fine if you don't. Anyway, this does have oak in it. And so this is, so if you kind of look at it, the idea behind the wines that we're tasting are to kind of show you the different styles. So when you are talking to somebody, and here's the thing, I promise you this, you are not going to like every wine that we have, which is fine. I don't care whether you do or don't. What I do want you to do is to be able to understand it and be able to talk to a guest about it. So for me personally, I do not like really oaky Chardonnays. But if you have a guest that says, I like oaky Chardonnays, you can't be like, wow, I'd recommend you get this instead. They already told you that they want an oaky Chardonnay. So who cares what I think? So you have to at least understand it. Well, of our oaky Chardonnays, we have blah, 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 blah. So this wine number 3 is an oaky Chardonnay, just so you know. So we are actually there. So. All right, so we're going to go back to wine number 1 real quick. So you have a list in front of you. We have talked about that it is a little bit off dry. It's not going to be completely sweet. We also talked about has a little bit of that kind of wet wool thing. We talked about it might be an underripe peach or maybe apricot. It's a light-bodied style wine. Has really nice acidity. So what do we think? Well, how about this? What can we already say that it is not?
Chardonnay. Not Pinot Grigio.
Okay.
I said Trebbiano. I did too.
Say that again.
I said Trebbiano.
Okay. It could be. So what would make you think that it could be potentially Trebbiano?
Because you said the dry fruit, that it was light, and then you said it was Old World, right?
So that's what we were talking about.
We were talking about it.
But yes, it is Old World. So
Okay, so then I broke it down. I don't know. I'm going with Trebbiano.
So what else could it be? I mean, and we'll get to where it is. So could this guys be Riesling? And before anyone says yes or no, we're going to let Nicholas tell us why this is.
Just because I've had Riesling before, our Riesling, it's been a long time. I just remember it being not super sweet, very high acidity, kind of gentle flavor, wasn't too strong. And then like the Sauvignon Blanc, I had them on a steak, that just seems a little bit too more complex than this is.
Okay. I mean, at least he has reasons, which is good. Because here's the thing. Well, does anybody else have any ideas? Hey, Walter, are you drinking these? I mean, you should get in on it.
I'm working right now.
Fair enough. Okay, so if Pinot Grigio, what would give you at least the perception of Pinot Grigio? Okay.
I like it too. It's Riesling, so super clear, really good.
Okay. Does anybody else have any ideas? Anyone at this table?
I was thinking, I can't pronounce it, Sauvignon Blanc. That's what I was thinking.
Which one?
Sauvignon
The Marlboro? Now just playing devil's advocate, do you end up getting a lot of grapefruit in this wine?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay. And I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that, especially that one, it would be really over the top as far as the grapefruit is concerned. And so that would be one reason why I wouldn't say it. Anybody else have any ideas on what this could be?
Is it one of our glass doors?
It is not.
Oh. I thought we were just doing glass. That's why I was saying no.
See, once again, what did I say at the beginning? Does anyone remember?
No to you.
Don't just start trying to make it what you want it to be. I gave you a whole wine list there. I never said, hey, these are glass pours. This is learning.
Is it the Cortese?
It is not. So now we're just guessing at this point. So
That's curious.
the point being is so Nick was on the track of one thing. We talked about how it has perception of sweetness, it finished dry, it has really mouth-watering acidity. So is it Riesling? No, it is not Riesling. But it is similar. So it is right below Riesling. Chenin Blanc. This is Chenin Blanc.
Why do I keep not looking at this one?
So here's the thing. How do you describe this to a guest? Once again, I know that some of you guys are making faces. I don't know if it was because you still tasted your coffee or maybe you just didn't care for the wine. The neat thing about this wine is, though, is that it does have kind of those qualities that somebody who likes Riesling could enjoy without it being Riesling. So one thing is, and it might have been a while since you tasted that. So Spätlese, so does anyone know what Spätlese means? Late harvest, exactly. So if it's late harvest, that's actually going to be a sweeter style. So, say that again?
What you just said, is that?
The Spätlese?
Yeah, is that in the family of the Chenin Blanc?
It is not. So just I guess a side note for Riesling, right? So if you're looking at a German Riesling, and obviously some of the German labels are really hard to read, whatever follows the word Riesling is going to tell you the sweetness level. So this is Cabernet. It's going to be sweet, but it's going to be less sweet. So if this was a Cabernet style, then you might be on that train. Being a Spätlese, which is a late harvest, means it's going to be even sweeter. If it says Auslese, it's going to be even sweeter than that. And then it starts going into the two other terms, which is Trockenbeeren Auslese and Ice wine. Both of those are going to be dessert wine style wines. And so what's really interesting though too is when you talk about wines, this number 2 and number 3, they really kind of tasted like wine. This one is somewhere between like almost like wine and nectar, because you can see there's a little bit more of a richness to it. There's a different viscosity to it. Even though it's a light style, it felt like it kind of coated your mouth a little bit more than the other ones did. So this is a light-bodied wine, which has perception of sweetness, finishes dry, has really nice mouth-watering acidity. Best way to describe that. So when you're talking to a guest and they say, hey, you know, I want something that's going to be sweet, but I don't like Riesling because it's too sweet for me, this is kind of where you go. So really, the way that we've set up the list is to make it so it's kind of easier for you guys. So our last list, and unfortunately, I guess I didn't have enough time to speak to everyone like this, there was a wine called Morgan Metallico, which was a unoaked Chardonnay. So if you have people who said, hey, I like Chardonnay, but I don't want it to be oaky. I mean, we should have been selling that all day long. And in most of our units, we weren't selling it at all. So it's my job to have you guys at least understand, hey, if we're down to these couple things, that's where we start asking those questions and you can hit those spots. So if someone said, I like a light-bodied, light style wine that has some sweetness but isn't overly sweet, that should kind of let you know where we're talking about. And so Chenin Blanc, we should sell this all day, whether you like the wine or not. That's really what they're asking for. So, go ahead and grab that one out so you can see the bottle. Alright, wine number 2. So we said that this is Old World. We said that it had a little bit of that cheese rind nutty, kind of strange, had a little petrol nose to it. We talked about how it's a touch of a bitter, kind of maybe like a lime rind, where you took a little bite of that lime rind. Has almost a little salinity, has that kind of saltiness where you can kind of taste it on your tongue. So, what are we thinking this is? We said Old World, so are we thinking this is in that dread section that you guys don't know anything about? I will tell you it is in the dread section you don't know anything about. So how would you describe this to a guest? Is this light bodied? Is this medium bodied? Is this full bodied? Medium bodied, yeah. So here's a little help, because I don't want you guys to get too tripped up on food and wine pairings, right? I know that you guys have all been servers. Let's say we had 100 guests that walked in here right now. How many guests ask you, does this go with my food? 2 out of 100 maybe? So please listen to me. I know this on camera, so it is obviously important. If somebody does ask a question, I want you to at least understand it. But the problem is a lot of times when people go, oh, does this pair with this, does this pair with this? I'm still trying to teach you about wine. Right now I want you to walk. That's where you're actually running. So, but the best way to understand how food and wine pairings work is if something is very light in style. So if you have oysters, are you going to want to have that with wine number 1, wine number 2, or wine number 3? Number 1. You can potentially do it with 2, 3 is going to be rounded out by it. So it's, once again, we're talking about that teeter-totter. And the closer you can get those to be like this, the better the pairing is actually going to be. So you have a light style dish, you want to have a light style wine. If you have a heavy, like if you had a roast, you're going to want something that's going to be a fuller in. And really that's the best and easiest way to describe that to you. We'll get into more food and wine pairings once we've learned to walk. So this is one of those Italian dreaded whites that we're talking about here. We did say that this is going to be medium body. What else can we say about this one? So, like I said, it has a little bit of that saltiness. There's a little bit of an earthy, has a little bit of that lime zest. There is some acid, not quite as high as the Vouvray that we had the time before. What's interesting about this wine is that it's interesting. You can't really, every time that you taste it, it tastes a little bit different. Bless you. Does that happen with Pinot Grigio? No. Pinot Grigios are like dry crisp. Now, granted, the Airmont Pinot Grigio is very good. I do really enjoy that one. There's some other Pinot Grigios that I think are decent. But for the most part, that's what Pinot Grigios are. This, like it or not, still has character to it. There's other flavors to this. There is almost kind of that creaminess. Actually, if you've ever been around, if you've ever tasted these, like honeycombs, like the actual kind of the waxy, beesy, then you also have that kind of salty cheese. So when I was in Italy, the very cool thing is they were biodynamic. So they had bees, nests, or what do you call it when they have the hives? Yeah. So they literally were pulling out the pieces, and so the number one, the honey was the best honey I've ever had in my life. But the thing is, they obviously keep those in the vineyards. It's very helpful. And I don't know if you guys know, there's obviously a problem with bees. We need to make sure that we're having more and more bees in our lives. It's important. So the neat thing is, though, is this wine has just more character. There's that salty, there's a little bit earthy, there's a little bit of funkiness. So the wine that you just tasted is a medium-bodied Italian white that is far more interesting than Pinot Grigio. So this is the Radicchio. So if you look at the Italian section as well, that is the second from the bottom. So if you were talking to someone, once again, let's say you didn't know anything about these, you know that Radicchio is going to be a medium body. That means that everything above it is going to be lighter in style. The one below it is going to be a little bit richer in style. All right, lastly, wine number 3. We said that this is an oaky Chardonnay. Now spell that one again. And here's the thing: sometimes if you don't stir it around, if you just kind of let it sit there for a minute and then you actually smell it again, sometimes it'll also permeate different smells. By stirring it, obviously, it's going to kind of move things around. But sometimes by just leaving it alone too, you can pick up things that you weren't picking up before. So, are you smelling any vanilla bean yet? And once again, like I said, it doesn't. So what actually happens as the wine gets warmer?
It gets more intense.
So it's kind of like everything in life, right? As things get warmer, it kind of expands. As it gets colder, it kind of contracts. So if the wine is ice cold, are you going to really be able to taste the wine? No. Not really. Now here's the thing: is that a bad thing? If somebody says, "I want my wine ice cold," well, you really shouldn't do that because you're not going to taste the flavor. Who are you? I mean, that guy doesn't. They don't need to hear that. Say, absolutely. We bring an ice bucket and we'll put it in an ice bath for you. If that's how people want to drink it, once again, that's where I hate people who judge what other people do. So here's the thing: if you have a table that sits there and drinks a bottle of Riesling, a lot of times you'll have. And granted, I know you guys do in the back, which is fine, whatever, but it's still not fine. You're like, my table's drinking Riesling. Who are you? To me, I love it when I got a Riesling table, because what that means is that they don't know anything about wine, and as I say, hey, you know what, next time you come in, we should really try the Chenin Blanc. It's going to be a little bit drier in style. Here's my card. I'll see you next time you come in. If you actually are teaching somebody about something, they're like, wow, that person was really nice. I enjoyed their company. I like the wine that they offered to me. I want to see that person again, as opposed to being like, how did you like your Riesling? And here's the thing, unfortunately, a lot of us are judgmental, which we really shouldn't be, because everybody's just people, right? So, the third wine is the Colin Chardonnay. It's from Sonoma Coast. Does anyone know where Sonoma Coast is? It is California, absolutely. And guess where it would be? It's on the coast. Crazy how that is, right? So Sonoma Coast, though, there's a thing called an AVA. AVA stands for American Viticultural Area. So there's a thing called the North Coast. That's a super AVA. Inside the North Coast has Mendocino, Lake, Sonoma, and Napa Valley. So Napa Valley is an AVA. then there are sub-AVAs of Napa Valley. So really, it would almost be like saying you have Michigan, you have Oakland County, then you have Bloomfield. It's the same concept. It's just different because they're. So I want you to kind of view it that way. So if you ever see on a list, like for instance the line that we have right now, if you're looking at your list, 2732, which is going to be on the right-hand side near the bottom. It says Providence Cabernet. It's from Rutherford. So does anyone know where Rutherford is?
City, California, Washington, California.
See? Perfect, it is. So really you have two choices. It's either going to be in Sonoma or it's going to be in Napa. So it is in Napa Valley. So if you have something that is valley fruit or you have something that's mountain fruit, what do you expect to be the differences in flavors?
Probably more like
Okay, so the mountain's going to be a little bit more mineralistic. Is there any other kind of way that you could describe it? Could be a little bit more. So a little bit more tannic is actually the word we're looking for. So if you think about it, so we have mountains right here and then we have a valley right here. Has anyone been to Phoenix?
Yes.
Well, does anyone know how hot it gets in Phoenix? It gets super hot. So that's exactly what happens in valleys. The valleys are going to be warmer than up on the top. On the top, though, they also are going to get very, it feels like the sun's right on top of it. So they get a different kind of intensity from the sun. So what happens is, though, is let's say it rains everywhere, right? So it was really interesting. I was in Argentina. They get 330 days worth of sunlight. They get 8 inches of rain. Today we're supposed to be getting a quarter of an inch today. So in probably this week, we get as much rain as they get all year, which is crazy just to think about. So if you have, everything gets rain, right? And so what happens to that rain once it stops?
It goes down to the.
Goes down to the valley, absolutely. So up here, they all got rain, bless you. They all got rain, but what happens is eventually either some of it will seep into the soil, and then the rest of it actually will wash down into the valley. So if you have something that has a lot of water, what's going to happen for those vines? They get a little bit more plump, they get all the nutrients they want, it's kind of like, they're eating well, they're doing everything, So the ones up here are struggling a little bit more. They're not going to be as big as grapes. And by not having as big as grapes, so let's say on the mountains they're this size, and on the valley they're this size. What would you expect is going to happen in those flavors?
Concentrated smaller.
Correct. The ones that are small are going to be more concentrated, but they're also, because of that, they have more skin to juice ratio. And having said that, you're going to get more tannin out of the skins, whereas this one you have tons of juice. And by having that juice, anything that's going to be valley fruit is going to be more lush. It's going to be kind of that Starbucks coffee, easygoing, still has tannin, but it's not going to be overly tannic. Things that are going to be on the mountains are going to be maybe a little bit more lean as far as the flavor profile, but they're going to be a little bit more tannic. They're going to be a little bit more full body. So, seeing that this says Rutherford, Rutherford is a valley floor area. When you start talking to your guests, how many Cabernets do we have on this list? There's 15. So, how many times when you're having that conversation with somebody and you say, would you like to have something like a Pinot Noir? Would you like something a little bit heavier and full body like a Cabernet? Or we want something in the middle? They say, I want Cabernet. Well, we just went to 15 wines. So the thing is that's where you can also start asking questions. So by asking that question, how do you like it? And they're like, I like it to be really lush and big, but I don't want it to be overly tannic. Perfect, let me give you the Providence, it's under $100. We should be selling that wine all day. That was kind of the point. All right, yes?
I have a question. The first wine, what was it called again?
It's the one right in front of you. So it's the Vouvray. So it's the Chenin Blanc. So it's bin 2301. It's right below the dry Riesling under the other white section. The second one you have is 2504, which is under the Italian whites. And the third one you have is 2308, which is under the Chardonnay section.
And is that Provenance for the Cabernet Sauvignon?
Providence.
Providence.
So just real quick, how many people are going to be watching college basketball tomorrow? Oh, what, you're studying? Okay, anyway, I love college basketball. It's one of my favorite things, right? But you've at least heard of college basketball, right? So the tournament actually begins really in full force tomorrow. How many people have heard of the Super Bowl? How many people have heard of the Masters Golf Tournament? Well, this gentleman named Jim Nantz, he is the announcer. So he is the most recognizable voice in all of sports. He actually makes that one. So Jim Nantz and a guy named Peter Deutsch make the call. So once again, sometimes people just want to hear a story.
Yep.
So they're like, hey, I want Chardonnay. You'd be like, hey, you know, we actually carry Jim Nantz's Chardonnay. Jim Nantz? You mean the guy who does the Masters tournament? Nantz. Nantz. So it's N-A-N-T-Z. Like I said, Howard Cosell was probably the most recognizable sports voice broadcaster. Now it is Jim Nantz, without question. And he does everything on CBS essentially. So people would recognize him. Now, Peter Deutsch, the gentleman he's working with, is kind of a marketing genius. Have any of you guys heard of George DeBoeuf, Beaujolais? Have you ever seen Beaujolais Nouveau? It always happens. Do you get out?
No.
You've never been to
I'm
a store?
at Antiamo or I'm at Wingstreet.
Alright, fair enough. Well, anyway, if you ever go into retail shops, right, they have these huge displays of Beaujolais Nouveau. And so in Europe, really it's the end of harvest, right? So they end up having Beaujolais Nouveau, and it's a huge party. Everyone ends up drinking it. These wines are pretty terrible. They taste like bananas and bubblegum. It's kind of what it tastes like. But they've been doing this for hundreds of years. I mean, it's really the big party in Europe. And so they're starting to try to do that in America. And so Peter Deutsch was the first one to kind of put that on the map. And so George DeBoeuf, although it sounds like most of you have not, he kind of made that very popular. Have any of you heard of Yellowtail?
Yeah.
Of course, everyone's heard of Yellowtail, right? He also made that popular. So this guy is kind of a marketing genius. So the two of them together have put this wine together, and I would imagine in time you're going to see that it's going to kind of explode as well once people start to recognize it here. But, so that was a fuller style wine. So the very first one was a lighter style. One in the middle was going to be a medium style, and the last one is a fuller style. The last one also has a little bit of oak aging on it. So, I want everyone just to take 5 minutes, decompress. I'm going to take away your glasses. If you still want to keep your glass, let me know. And then we are going to do red as well. That people wanted answers to. So, we shall answer them. Michelle, what did you say that you said that they were asking about?
The Pascal Renault.
Pascal Renault. So, Pascal Renault is one of your glass pours. It is from Emballage. So it is not making villages, just so you know. Please don't say that. I would never ask you another question. And so if any of you guys remember, Renault is one of those really bad car companies, but that's how you pronounce it. So it's Pascal Renault, Marc Emballage. It does not have oak on it, so it is going to come across, as Michelle was mentioning, she told her guests, hey, this is going to be similar to like Pinot Grigio, which really is not a bad analogy, because it really is similar in style, it just has a little bit more weight to it. So, bless you. When you end up tasting the wines, right? So kind of the analogy I like to use is thinking about if we were going to go into a pool, right? So the very first wine that we tasted was maybe like ankle deep. The second wine that we tasted was maybe waist deep. The third wine that we tasted was maybe shoulders deep. So you can kind of think about that as far as kind of weights and styles. And so if you think about that, the Pascal Renault is, so we'll say that the Pinot Grigio is probably waist deep. The Pascal Renault might be like middle of chest. So it is similar. So I think that's a really good analogy, but you also need to let guests know there's no oak on it. So because there's no oak on it, it's not going to be as rich as, we'll say, the Ferrari Grano or the Pauline that we just got on the tasting. So what is interesting about Marc Emballage, though, that I like, is that it's one of those wines that if you just taste it, you're just kind of like, you know. But then when you have it with food, it's going to elevate. If we just sat here and drank a bottle of Pascal Renault, when you get to 40 minutes later, you're like, I kind of really like this one. So it's one of those that it's kind of nondescript. So it's almost like a bass player in a band, right? it's still necessary because it's keeping that rhythm section for you. It's not going to be the diva like the lead guitarist or the singer. It's just going to keep that rhythm for you, and that's kind of what that wine does.
So when a silver asks, I guess, like about price range, how good or bad is that? As I have two questions written down from my servers actually. That's the first question, and the second question, when I guess ask a server, what do you like? How the server should answer that question?
Well, so I'm going to have to put that out to you guys first, and then we'll kind of talk about it ourselves, right? So since you guys are servers as well, can you ask price range? Of course you can. But it's how do you ask the question? So how would you ask that question simply?
I mean, I would kind of describe, I would describe why they're more expensive. I would say, like, a good example is, where is it? Brunello Montepulciano beef Malto. I don't know, a hard time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I would say, the Rosso di Montepulciano is a younger version of it. It's only aged for a year and a half. It's still a great wine, but if you move up the list, it's a little more expensive. The Brunello di Montepulciano is aged for 5 years, so you're going to see a lot more subtle flavors. It's going to have a nice, more peppery, like, a little more complex. You're getting more bang for your buck there, so they can make their own decisions.
Sure. So one way you can do it, as Nicholas had mentioned, is that you give two different price ranges, so you're actually creating the range itself. How else can we actually do it?
Ask for yourself and where your profits open up. And then there you can judge from like, oh, so we're ready to, spend a little bit more, or, so it just depends on the comfort level to me, honestly.
Well, and so another, which is great, I mean, that's true. Let's say that it's their anniversary. Is there the potential that they're going to spend more money on their anniversary than if it was just a regular Tuesday? More than likely, yes. So what's another way that you can end up doing it? Glass bottle. I'm sure that you guys have had some pharmaceuticals that come in, and sometimes they actually tell you the range. They'll say, hey, we can't spend more than $80 on a bottle of wine. Sure. That's another way that you can end up doing it. Just by asking the questions. You could say, because we'll say that Nicholas is running this party, right? And he's the boss of the group. Maybe he also has a budget of what he has to spend. So that's why it's also so important that you guys, and I will make sure that each one of the restaurants are doing it. Downtown, we literally have the hostesses have to find, so let's say Walter is at a table. If we see that Walter's at the table, they'll still wait until Walter walks from that table so that they can hand them the chip. The chip's going to have all the information that you need. It's going to say Nicholas Roast, time the reservation is, it's two top, it's his birthday, whatever it may be. So you have the information when you're actually talking to your guests. If your if your restaurant that you're in right now is not doing that, please make sure that you're telling your GMs. I will get on them about that as well. But it is really important that you have that information because that does also help when you go to a table and say, oh, I see that you're celebrating outstanding. Since are you going to have some wine or do you want to celebrate with champagne? I mean, that could obviously lead into that question. We sell so little amount of sparkling wine. I think part of it is that people don't want to open bottles themselves, but part of it is too that we don't really think about it. And unfortunately, in Europe, they drink bubbles just to start any meal that you have. In America, we just do it as a celebratory thing, which is fine. If we know that it's a celebratory occasion, though, we really should just be offering it. Hey, would you like to actually start with some bubbles, and then we can work into something else. So that would give the opportunity to then talk about that as well. And then from that, you could say, we do have multiple different levels as well. We have some entry level. We also have some ultra premium. You use words like entry level, premium, ultra premium. That way, you're kind of leading them up the scales without saying a price. Because if we say, hey, why don't you have the Veuve Clicquot? It's one of my favorites. And then she's like, oh, I'll have the Veuve. I just want to let you know that's $112. So, but the thing is that if you do it that way, then she's like, what, are you saying I can't afford it?
Right.
And so then that's a bad way of doing it. Another way you can do it, because really, what I want you guys to, you should be comfortable because really this list is in this person's hand, right? You should be able to see it backwards in your mind. So you should know where everything's located. So when you talk to her, you can say, you know, if you are looking for one of a fuller body cab, it's going to be at the bottom right of the list. If you're talking about glass boards, you would say, you know, it's going to be at the top right of the list. It's going to be lightest to fullest. So without even looking at it, I should know exactly where we're talking about this. So if they are talking about sparkling wines, how many sparkling wines do we have on this list? We have 5. One of them is a split. So if we're having a group, how many glasses is a split? It's like 1.5. So it's 187 milliliters. How many ounces do you have in a 750 bottle?
How many ounces of glass?
No, in a bottle.
24.
25.4 ounces is going to be a bottle of wine. So once again, it's a math equation, right? So at this table right here, there's 5 people. How many ounces can I give each person? We gave 6, then all of a sudden when I get to Nicholas, he's not going to be enough. You can only give 5 ounces to that, which is still fine, but you have to know the math. If you don't know the math, you're going to run into some problems. So, like I said, everything truly is a math equation. That's how you guys need to start thinking about it. Like I said, if you were going to take even the certified sommelier exam, they put 12 champagne flutes down and say, I need you to pour this 12 guests. So how many ounces does that mean each person gets? 2 ounces. Exactly. So just start doing the math on that. So let's say that this was an A type. How many do they get? So we'll say that Nicholas orders a bottle of wine. What would you say to him? Do you A, bring just 2 bottles because he doesn't know any better? Do
How many will be drinking this bottle?
So yeah, so one thing you can say is you can come up to the guest or the host and say, oh, perfect, I'll be more than happy to grab that bottle of blue for you. I just want to let you know that there's 25 ounces, so that's roughly going to be 3 ounces per person. It's going to be about half a glass. Is that going to be all right? And you say, yeah, absolutely, we're just doing this as a toast. Perfect. Got the information, we found out. You might say, oh, I was not aware of that. Please bring me a second bottle. Perfect, I'll be more than happy to. The worst thing you can do is bring the second one saying, oh, well, you're going to need it. Well, no, maybe because it's such an expensive bottle, he only wanted to buy the one because he was just doing a toast for his guests, and now his guests are like, oh, sweet, look, we're going to party tonight. So, like I said, that's why it's so important that you're doing. And the second one, like I had mentioned, if you do the math wrong, and you've poured and you poured and you poured, and then you finally get to the host, and now you've got like 2 ounces of wine left, it's a bad thing. So that's why I always say that it's better to pour less than more. There's a couple reasons why. In a room of 10 people, and this is a national average, 10 people, how many people are actually drinkers?
5.
2. 2 people, I know. And I didn't say if it was restaurant people. If it was restaurant people, it would be 8, and then 2 of them are court ordered not to drink anymore. So we're obviously different. But in a real group, it would end up being where there's only 2 people that are really drinkers. So on a table like this, if you poured less for everybody, like we said, let's say we just poured 2 ounces for everybody. That means we poured out 10 ounces. That means there's still 15 ounces left in them. Wow. Gives me 2 reasons why that's a good thing. Now, granted, we'll probably still pour at least 3 ounces, we'll say. But, so we'll use 3 ounces. That's 15, that leaves you 10 left in the bottle. It gives me more opportunity than A, Kayla's one drinking at a very rapid pace, and everybody else is kind of going a little bit slower. So that gives me the opportunity then to top it off a little bit, see if you guys wanted to do anything. If you don't, I can set down the decanter and I can walk away. So I'm touching the table, seeing if they needed anything, but if they're still just involved in their conversations, I can just walk away. If I'm here and I'm doing this, and then Nicholas is like, you know, maybe we should really get our appetizer going. Perfect, you're already there. So to me, it makes more sense to pour less, because I talked to you guys before, the more service that you're actually giving your table, the more that they actually want to leave you. If they feel like, hey, I got the same service I got at Denny's for breakfast today, except for they were better with their coffee than I was with the stuff that they gave me here, that's a bad thing. So that's why it's so important, you can just kind of top things off. You can see if they need anything, you're there to answer any questions, but you also aren't like, so, you know, let them kind of determine. I mean, you guys have to play psychology, right? You have to go to the table and see within, 30 seconds? What the mood is, what they're actually here for, if they're ready to go, if they have somewhere they have to be. That's why it's really important that you guys should be asking your tables. Your very first speech when you're talking and you're at the table, do you have any time constraints? Is there anything that you're doing later on? Because maybe you aren't the top priority. Maybe it's like, hey, we're going to a game today, but we want them to come meet. Perfect. The most important thing for them then is that you get them out on time. I had a friend who was going to a baseball game we worked with downtown, told them, hey, I need to be out by said time. He was out 40 minutes after he asked to be out. So even if it was good, bad, and different, that's all he started talking about. I told him this is the time I want to be out. I was out 40 minutes after I asked to be out. It's not a good thing. Once again, one of the biggest problems that we have in our society is people don't listen anymore. So it's amazing how people will ask a question, or you'll even kind of throw out a question, and you're not even really, so it's like, hey, how are you doing today? And she answers, and I'm just not even listening. So let me tell you about today's features. Well, don't ask the question if you're not going to actually listen to what she says. She might say, hey, I just recovered from breast cancer. It's my first day back, Oh, yeah, great. So let me just tell you about today's features, There are people like that. And a thing like that, if you're asking those questions, acknowledge, oh my gosh, this is outstanding. Congratulations. We are celebrating today. Would you like to start with some wine? Listen to what people are actually saying. Or don't ask the question. Because that infuriates me when people don't actually listen.
One more question. Again, these questions it's real life. I brought from my staff. So when a guest tastes the wine, if he doesn't like it, we take it back.
Yep.
And we had that guest, he did it 3 times.
Okay.
In a row.
Were they all bottles? Were they all glasses?
Because he doesn't like it, so we have to take it back. So, we could solve it our way, but I need to know, what's the best way as a server to handle this situation?
Well, a couple of things. And just asking, were they glass pours or were they opening the fresh bottles?
It's a bottle.
Okay. Well, that's pretty odd, number one.
I know, it is odd.
And now, was the server recommending these wines, or was the guest just ordering stuff and sending them all back?
Not really. He picked them. He picked the first one, he picked the second one. But when he got to the second one and he returned it, as a server, should they call a manager right away, or?
Yeah, in a case like that, so
Yeah.
it's a great question, number one. And so here's the thing. It was interesting because I had a meeting with the GMs where we were talking about other things, and it always ends up being one of the most egregious things, or something that's such an anomaly. That probably won't happen again this whole year. But at the same point, we should all kind of have in place how are we going to handle a situation like that. So the first bottle, maybe they said, hey, I want you to try this wine, and she was like, I didn't really care for it. Now the thing is the first question should be what?
What would you like about it?
Yeah, did the wine seem corked to you? Did it lack in fruit, or did you just not care for the flavor of the wine? Because, and once again, some of you guys seem offended. And it's like, you didn't make the wine, so why are you offended? If they didn't like the wine, whatever. And if it was corked, and you're offended, then it's like, wait a minute, they shouldn't drink a corked wine. So,
Right.
that always just blows my mind when servers they seem impatient and they're just like, so what do you want now? It's like, what? So once again, we got to realize you should think about it like it's your best friend and they're at your house. And they're like, hey, you didn't like it? Okay, cool. Well, let's find you something else. So tell me, first of all, what didn't you like about the wine? So in this scenario, let's just look at our list here. Let's say the first wine that they tried was the Primitivo, the Zinfandel. So the first questions we're asking is, I just want to let you, did it taste off to you, or did you just not like the style? She said, no, I just didn't really care for the style. You say, was it too full-bodied? Was it too light-bodied? So that way, you're kind of helping gauge where they're going to go next with it. So if they said, oh, I like it to be a little bit more full-bodied, and then you go, okay, well, why don't you try the Rosso di Montalcino?
Is that server doing that, or they should call the manager to do that?
For the first
The first one, the server should be able to do it.
Okay.
And so here's the thing. So we'll use that scenario again. So the Primitivo, we'll say that the Primitivo was the one, and she said, hey, I just didn't care for the style. It was just too earthy or it was too, you want to, like you said, you want to kind of gauge what it was that she didn't care for. Say, was the body right? Or did it seem too full bodied for her? Was it too light bodied? Or did it not have enough fruit profile? So here's the thing, you can actually have a wine that can be bad without it being corked. So I don't know if you guys ever had it before. What happens is it'll start to oxidize. So like if there's a little air that gets to it, air is kind of a killer of wine. And as it actually gets more and more air to it, it can still have a smell of fruit even on the nose. But then when you taste it, what happens is there's absence of fruit and it actually finishes really dry and kind of bitter. So those are the hardest ones to detect. Because you can be decanting it, it smells all right, you're like, oh, this is going to be fine. The person says, hey, I don't like this wine. So what I would recommend is if they say, perfect, now do you just think the bottle is flawed, and would you like another bottle of the same wine, or would you like to try something different? And then from that question, if she says, no, I want to try something different, that's would you like a lighter style, a fuller style? So they should be kind of gauging those questions first, as opposed to being like, okay, well, I'll bring it and then take the wine back. And then let this person just sit looking at the list and then go back and go, okay, what did you decide? Because if you're not actually helping them, then once again, if they said that it was too full body and then they choose an Amarone, then we're doing an injustice because they're not going to like that one either because the Amarone is going to be way bigger than the Zinfandel. So that's where just by having a couple leading questions, and let's say they didn't like the second bottle, it could happen as well. At the second time, I would say, I do understand. Give me just 1 second. I would grab Ramey and say, hey, look, these are the 2 bottles. And so here's the thing. Once again, we can't take offense to it. It's going to happen maybe once a year, if that. Honestly, that might not happen again. Because here's the thing. Most people, and I know this is hard for you guys to believe, but most people don't want to complain. Most people don't want to send things back. Most people, even if it's a corked bottle, they've never even had corked wine. So they're just like, oh my God, this is terrible. And they just drink it. And at the end, you're like, was there something wrong? I just didn't really care for the wine. And then you smell it and you're like, oh my God, this is corked. So does anyone know what cork smells like?
Vinegar.
Well, it can, but really it smells like a musky basement, it smells like wet cardboard. So like if you're actually decanting a wine, you can actually smell, because that's one of the reasons why it's so important that you're decanting as well, because you should be able to smell the natural aromas from the actual wine as you're doing it. And if you smell something that smells like that, so I don't know if, like for me personally, and I open a lot of wine downtown, and so as I'm opening it, I will usually just kind of go like this before I mean, I'm not like this, but at the same point, it's one of those where you want to make sure that there isn't something that is flawed. Because if it is flawed, and maybe I do catch that, I might really go, give me a second. Say, what, this is truly a flawed wine, I apologize. So sometimes what I would do is I'd say, what, Kayla, have you ever smelled corked wine? She might say no. Be like, I'm going to pour you just a sample of this, do not taste it, please. And then I would go grab another bottle, I bring a new bottle, and say, okay, I want you to smell the difference between the two. And then it becomes this thing at the table like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. At the time I actually had a wine like this, but I just kept it. I just thought it was a bad wine. And that way you're educating somebody without, and say, hey, you know what? And so that's why it's also important that when you're decanting, though, if you smell it, it's so much more important that you say, hey, don't taste this. Because I don't know if you ever tasted it, it's hard to get rid of that flavor too. It just kind of hangs out. So, now, having said that, if you do have a corked wine as well, make sure that you take it back to the decanter, get rid of that. That's why it's also important that you have guests taste the fresh bottle of wine. So we'll say Kayla ordered a second bottle of our beautiful Andiamo Cab. And the reason you need to have a second glass, she needs to taste it. If it tastes good, then we're good to go. If she says, hey, this is a little different, it's a big variance between wines 1 and 2, then I would say, Kayla, would you like me to actually wait to pour the rest for your guests? Because let's say she still said, no, I like it. It actually has a little bit more fruit than the other one, or maybe it has a little bit more flavor than the other one. You can still say, hey, would you like me to wait to pour for your guests until they've actually finished their glass? Because there could be a variance. Or she can say, oh, no, it's still great, just go ahead and pour it. So there are multiple things. When do you have to bring new glasses?
Change, like say from your own to the cab.
That's one way, absolutely. There are any other reasons we need to change glasses? Like a different bottle than the one we were
Well,
drinking?
it's the same wine, like if they ordered a second round of the same,
Well,
but a different bottle.
Like a Chardonnay, but a different bottle.
Or like,
Oh,
no, like a house Chardonnay, they all drink it all, and then he gets another one.
So-
We either want them to try
so-
that second one.
So here's the thing, right? So Andiamo Cat, we'll say that we order one of those first. We end up having her taste my phone. We have her taste the first one. She says, hey, we'd like to have a second bottle of Andiamo Cat. For that one, we only have to bring one new glass. We're gonna have Kayla end up tasting it. Now, if she orders a third bottle, that is where you would say, Kayla, would you like me to bring new glasses for your guests? In 6 years that I've been at Jomir, I've only had one person that asked to do that. So that's kind of a, but it's truly, in true service, you should ask that question. Another thing that you could see, and I don't know if you see sometimes, I don't know, it literally looks like this lady dips her hands into the butter and then grabs her wine glass because it's just like smeared all over it. It has like, you know, looks like she would take a drink and then turn it, and so there's lipstick going like 3/4 of the way. In a case like that, you might say, hey, would you like me to bring you a new glass? Something like that. Those would be reasons you would bring new glasses. Now, the other thing is, let's say that this one was a 2016. If we come back and say, you know what, unfortunately, I just realized that 2017 we've switched over to that. Would you still like to have this? If she says yes, that's when everyone have new glasses because they're going to just change, even though it's the same. All right. So I think we should play the game right now. So I need you to choose a red wine for us off the list. It can be both glass or bottle. We don't know, and then we're going to start asking our questions. Let us know when you're ready to go, sir.
All right.
You ready? All right. So, Raymond, what's our first question we're going to ask? Nicholas, are you ready?
No, I didn't really say that, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was writing something. What's the question about what?
That's what I'm asking. What question are we going to ask our gentleman here? Very first question.
Like everybody here?
Yeah, well, because he's
man.
choosing the wine. What wine are we going to, what question are we asking? At this point, we still have 81 wines. We have no idea what he's looking at.
I mean, red or white.
Red or white? Perfect. It's a red. Now we have 53 wines to go.
So we took half of the menu away.
Yeah, pretty much. Michelle, what's the next question we're going to ask? To Nicholas here.
Sweet or dry? No, we don't have any sweet dry.
Yeah, so that's a,
Italian?
well, so
Like,
right. So what I would recommend is, because you're kind of on all those, what you would want to say is, would you like something that's going to be lighter like a Pinot Noir? Do you like something that's going to be fuller like a Cabernet? Or do you want something that's going to be somewhere in between?
A little lighter.
So you want us a lighter style. So, if you want us a lighter style, how many wines did we just get rid of? We got rid of 15 Cabernets. Since he said lighter style, we still, here's the thing, you guys know as well as I do, what somebody's medium is and somebody's medium rare is completely different. So what his version of a lighter wine is, but we can still say probably Cabernets are gone. But everything else I would still keep in play until we get some more answers, right? So Denise, what's the next question we're going to ask? So we said lighter, and we know we're in red. What would be our next kind of way that we could bring down the style?
I would say they're all on the dry side.
Yep, they are. So kind of along those lines, maybe we end up doing like an old world, new world question, right? So we could say, so Nicholas, would you care for something that's going to be a little bit more earthy, maybe a little bit more subtle as far as the fruit, or would you like something that's going to be a little bit more forward fruit based?
More earthy, subtle.
Okay, perfect. Now, most people aren't going to say old world, so it's helpful that he's giving us that little hint. But having said that, how many wines does that mean we've just killed? Quite a few. So that means we've gotten rid of all of our Pinot Noirs. It means we've got rid of the Sangiovese, the Sienna that is. The Ferrari can still kind of hang out there because that's Spanish. But the Piccolo Cru is gone, Coignac's gone, Syrah's gone, Malbec's gone, Tempranillo, Merlot, Zin, and all of our cabs. Now, we said a lighter style, said a kind of an earthier, old world thing. That means that Amarone's gone. That means Nebbiolo's gone. Barbaresco's gone. Barolos gone. Super Tuscans are gone. So really, depending on what his version of light style is, I would probably still keep from Zinfandel up to Barbera, and you could still keep a couple of our glass pours as well. So, what is our next question that we could ask potentially? Amanda.
Would you like oak Torano? No?
Well,
Fruit forward or dry?
well, we did that one just a minute ago because we did the fruit forward or the earthier. Okay, he said they like the old world earthier, still kind of a light bodied wine at this point. What other keys? I mean, we've gotten to what, 8 wines at this point? So how are we going to try to narrow those 8?
I don't even know.
We
Spicy.
forward tannin.
Well, we could potentially add tannin to that, but if he said that he really likes a light bodied wine, there's very few wines that are going to be light bodied and tannin. So, so a couple things that we didn't think of, and so obviously red's a little bit different than whites, right? So one question that you could potentially ask, do you like things that have bottle age? Or do you like something that's going to be very youthful? So if something is going to be very young, typically, so the best way to describe it is if you have something that is very young, they tend to be either the most tannic or the most acidic that it's going to be. So you think about like the vine is just kind of like hanging out on the vine, or the grape is hanging out on the vine, just chilling, getting some sun. Then they pick it off the vine, it's thick in the shoot, ends up going through fermentation. Then they end up putting it in a bottle. That goes in a bottle, gets shipped to wherever it's going to. So it's just agitated, right? It'd be almost like if somebody cuts you off on the way here and you're just pissed. But as time goes on, your heart rate drops. You start to calm down. You don't want to kill them anymore. So the same thing is true with wine, right? So it's in that agitated, young, youthful state, and as it kind of hangs out in the bottle, it starts to create layers. It starts to soften. It starts to become human. It becomes more mature, so to speak. And so that's kind of how wine is. So if you ask somebody, would you like something that has a little bit of bottle age to it, that means they want something that's going to be a little bit more complex. They want something that's going to be a little bit softer, a little bit more rounded out. If they want something that's very youthful, that means they want something that's still going to be very juicy or rich or tannic or acidic. So all those things are going to be more youthful. So in that question, we could ask, do you like something that's going to be a little bit more youthful, or do you like things that have a little bit more bottle age to it?
I would say youthful.
Okay, so we said youthful. What does that mean we can get rid of? That means we can get rid of the Spinozzi, which is a 2013, because that is something that has age to it. Everything else is pretty young. That is still left over. What would be another question that we could ask? One of the ones that Ramy had mentioned, you could actually ask price point. Would be one direction that you could go with it. But if you didn't want to do that, since we are down to, we'll say, 6 wines, you can then start asking a couple different questions. Well, actually, I'll take that back. One other one, which I already know it's not going to be, but let's say that you say you wanted a medium body kind of, you say, would you like something that is a blend, or do you typically like things that's going to be a mono varietal? So mono varietal obviously just means that it's just a single variety. So if you like to be a single variety. So we like a single variety, which obviously we know. So what we're talking about now, we have Barbera, we have Dolcetto, we have the Sangioveses. As he was mentioning, Brunello is going to be a bigger, richer, fuller style, so that's not going to be it. So it would just really be the Rosso, and you have the Chianti Classico as well. So that's where you could start just asking the questions. Have you ever had a Sangiovese? Are you a fan of Sangiovese? Or is that too full in style for you?
It's a little too full. I don't want to really like it.
So that's where you're now talking about 2 wines. It's either going to be the Barbera or the Dolcetto. And so to get to how that would actually be, yeah, they're all. So that's where obviously we'd have to have a little bit of knowledge to see which way you wanted it, either the Barbera or the Dolcetto. But as you can see, it was just breaking it down, just asking a couple questions. And all of those things, did we talk once about really? Not really. I mean, you're just talking about a map. And all we were doing is trying to figure out where he wanted to be on the map.